What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another car review. This is of course the 2021 Hyundai Santa Fe Calligraphy. So about the new calligraphy version here of the Santa Fe. Well, the Santa Fe itself is very much new for the 2021 model year. And so they say it's on a new platform, but this is still kind of the same body as the old Santa Fe, which, by the way, when I mean old, it was only old 2 years ago. They just came out with a brand new, all new version on a new platform and everything for the 2019 model year. I reviewed one a couple of years back whenever those came out. And here we are, 2021, just 2 years later, and we have a heavily reworked version again. And so I gotta hand it to Hyundai. I mean, they are constantly keeping it fresh and making huge changes. We have a brand new engine here. We have totally new looks, and it's very much improved. The inside also is completely revamped for the interior. But as far as the outside goes here on the new Santa Fe, I think it looks really sharp. Obviously, we have some Palisade-inspired cues here, but it continues on with the Santa Fe styling theme that we had in the previous model years. So you have, these very slender accent lights at the top, but then your actual headlights there lower in the front bumper. And the calligraphy trim here is a new top trim for the Santa Fe, and so that gives you some luxury touches and a little bit of a higher end look with the unique grille there, which has a unique pattern to it. You also have the extra bright work all around this vehicle. That again gives a little bit of extra bling. Coming down to the sides, this one has 19-inch wheels, and so this is a kind of a rare package that early here in the 2021 model year you'll be able to get 19-inch wheels with the calligraphy, but typically you'll be getting 20-inch wheels on the calligraphy trim. But these 19 should give you a little bit of a softer ride, and I think these wheels look really cool. I like the two-tone kind of pattern you have to them here. Also coming down to the sides, I think it's kind of unique how contoured the body is here in the Santa Fe. It's a little curvier and a little more visually interesting for its side profile than what you get with a lot of the other mid-sized SUV crossovers. And so I think it looks nice, and again, you have more of this satin finish here to kind of spruce things up a little bit around the windows and whatnot. And then going out to the back there, again, it has been restyled. So we have a very similar taillight shape to before, but the taillight internals there are all new. You also have a new little light bar that goes across the middle there, which is a nice touch. And again, more of that very large satin metal finish there on the lower part of the rear bumper, and overall very attractive back end. But it is worth noting there are no calligraphy badges on this car, so unless you know what to look for, there's no badge or anything to denote that you have the top version of the Santa Fe. Even like Santa Fe Limiteds used to have badges denoting that, but now this is a little more low profile, and unless you know what to look for, you won't know that you're in the top version, which some people might not love. But I think it's very distinctive with its styling, and so I think that'll hopefully help set it apart over the lower trims of the Santa Fe. But overall, I think it's a really nice look. Right, so for the interior of the 2021 Santa Fe, well, it is a huge improvement. I mean, it looks nothing like the past few years of the Santa Fe. I mean, that interior was still fairly nice, but I mean, this really blows out of the water, especially again with this calligraphy trim being a little bit nicer here on the inside. I mean, one of the dead giveaways you have here are the quilting on the tops of the seats here. You also have a suede-like headliner and a few other things here to jazz it up on the inside. But yeah, I mean, it's really luxurious, and honestly, it's kind of impressive for a vehicle that has an as-tested price of about $43,000. It actually looks and feels a little bit nicer than that. Now, there are some cheap spots and a few caveats I'll get to in a minute, but overall, it's a very impressive interior from your first, impression here. But first thing, sitting down in these seats here. So these are Napa leather seats here in this version, and they are really soft and comfortable. They also have heating and cooling to them, and lots of adjustments as well. You have lumbar adjustment, and you even have a thigh support that comes out here in its power. And so, I mean, super comfortable seats, a decent amount of bolstering for this class of vehicle, but overall, I really like them. The steering wheel here in the Santa Fe is also very nice. It has a great 9-3 grip. I love the perforated sections of the wheel here, but nice and rich feeling leather. And you have some buttons here that are plastic, but they feel like metal a little bit, especially the spoke here towards the bottom. Actually is cool to the touch and is pretty convincing. You also have these metal plated paddle shifters here on the back of the wheel that are nice, but I mean, just the buttons are very simple and straightforward and very easy to control everything, and I love this steering wheel. The gauges are also fantastic here. So again, in these top trims, you have this 12.3-inch digital gauge display, and it's very high resolution, very crisp with the graphics. Unfortunately, though, there aren't really any customizations to it aside from just putting it into sport mode. That'll give you a sportier look to the gauges. Otherwise, though, it just is always that look, and I will say at night, that isn't great. Having those white gauge faces at night is a little, glaring in your face, I guess. So I do wish there was a darker theme you could have outside of the sport mode, but unfortunately, there's not much customization here. So they're just, cool to look at, nice to have the digital gauges, but the whole point of digital gauges is having extra customization, and these really don't have that, and I really wish they would improve that. You can, scroll through a few little things there in the middle, but again, not a lot of information to display there in the middle either. It used to be, even in older Hyundais, you could have your audio information or something like that displayed in there. You can't do that anymore. You have to go over to the middle here in order to have all that. But before we get to the middle, another interesting thing. So this one does have a head-up display. That is one of the things you get here in the calligraphy trim. And it's nice that they give you that, except I don't know if it's this press vehicle or what, but in my seating position, with the head-up display adjusted so it's as high up as it can go, I still can't see it over, the dashboard there. So it is still too low, and it's like I need to be another couple inches higher in my seat in order to actually see that head-up display. If you like sitting low in your vehicle, or if you're not super tall, just note that, you might not be able to use that head-up display, so make sure if you're planning on using that feature that you hop in one of these and make sure you will be able to actually see it with it fully adjusted and in the correct position for you. But it is nice to have a head-up display. It is a good one that, actually projects onto the windshield. It doesn't have any kind of weird little plexiglass thing here on the dashboard like some older Hyundais used to have. And so it's really well done if you can see it. Coming over to the side of the dashboard here, though, right up top, and one of the most impressive things here is this 10.25-inch widescreen touchscreen display. This is the same system they've had in many other Hyundais and Kias for the past couple of years, and it's really cool. I love the graphics for everything, especially like the radio display, how it has like an old-timey kind of look with tubes and stuff. It's just kind of creative the way that they designed this, and they went the extra mile. Instead of just having it be bland and blasé, that actually has a little bit of character to it, which isn't something that can be said for a lot of the other vehicles in this segment. But it's just, nice and easy to go through. The one odd thing about this screen, though, is that it does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but it is wired. But if you go for a lower version of the Santa Fe that has a smaller 8-inch touchscreen, that has wireless smartphone integration, which is much better because then you don't ever have to plug in your phone. You hop in your car every time and you have that smartphone integration. This is something that Hyundai and Kia both have across their lineup. The big, nice upgraded screen with navigation does not have the wireless, and the smaller, cheaper screens do. Everything in the lineup currently has it this way. I don't know what happened, what mix-up there was at Hyundai and Kia that they ended up having the upgraded screen having a, not as great of a smartphone experience, but that's the way it is here in these, so just keep that in mind. If you're someone who's on the fence about going for a higher trim, if you really want that wireless connectivity, you might be better off going for a cheaper trim, actually. But anyway, aside from that, it's really great. One of the new thing here is that you now have a Harman Kardon stereo here in these higher trims of the Santa Fe, and it's a 12-speaker, 630-watt stereo, and it actually sounds really good. They also have the Clarify technology and some other software that really make it feel like a surround sound experience, and it's impressive. Honestly, I would have to say this is probably towards the top of the pack as far as this segment of vehicle and having a stereo system that really rocks. This one is fantastic. I was very impressed with the sound quality. So that's a huge improvement over previous Hyundais, which have like infinity stereos that were very underwhelming. This is now pretty top notch, and so I think it's a fantastic sound experience. Coming down, you have this whole new area, which is kind of similar to what you see in like the Palisade and stuff, and also the new Sonata for that matter. And so you have volume and tune knobs down here lower, and it's all nice within easy reach. I love that you don't have to reach very far for any of this stuff. A lot of other vehicles, it's like you're reaching really far for everything, but I love that this is close and also just kind of centered, so it's not, trying to be driver-centric or anything. It's nice and easy, so both the driver and the passenger can control all this stuff. And, a decent amount of buttons down here for your climate control and stuff, but not too overwhelming, very easy to work all that stuff. You also have a new push-button shifter here for the first time in the Santa Fe, which is great and frees up a lot of space around here, and gets rid of any kind of mechanical shifter linkage so that you have more storage spaces here in the Santa Fe than you did before. You also even have, with this drive mode selector, you have a locking center diff you can do, which is an interesting touch here in this, but nice to have that. You also see your button for the surround view camera. It does have a 360 camera here in the calligraphy trim. It's very high resolution, works really well, and really nice to have that. But yeah, moving on to the storage spaces here in the Santa Fe. They did a really good job and did some nice improvements here with this new version. So first off in the doors here, you have a nice large pocket with a bottle holder. In the middle here though, the big headline thing is you have this massive bin underneath of that whole center console area. And I mean, it's really large and wide. It's nicely rubberized. It has also a traditional power outlet as well as a USB jack in there on the passenger side. So great to have all that space. nice. And then on the top part here, you'll see this interesting cup holder setup where you have one a little bit lower and then one a little bit higher. You also see another USB jack in there, and also this little slot, which is your Qi wireless phone charger. This is kind of a unique take with the way Hyundai does these, and they've been using this kind of design for a couple other models too, where you actually stand up your phone in here, and it's just hard plastic. I wish it was rubberized, because if you don't have a phone case, this will definitely scratch up your phone. So you're going to want to make sure you have a screen protector and all that if you put your phone in there. But it's kind of an interesting thing, is it does hold your phone nice and snug with this little lip. It's just kind of an interesting way to do that, but it is a space effective way, so I can't blame them for doing that. But just interesting there. And then you have this center armrest, which is nice and softly padded. But what I've noticed, I've already been driving this vehicle for a week, is that where my elbow lands is this hard spot. So it's soft for the armrest, and then it's soft here for the center tunnel. But then this little spot where my elbow actually hits is hard, and every time I'm putting my elbow down, I'm like, man, I wish it was padded right there. Just another 2 inches of padding would have been perfect. So I kind of missed the mark there a little bit in my opinion. But anyway, you open this up, and you'll see a very deep cubby here. I mean, you know, nice and square, but very deep space. Little removable tray on the top here. But yeah, I mean, the materials throughout this vehicle, though, are pretty nice. But another area, a couple other areas where they just missed the mark a little bit, I think, is that you have, for example, like I said, some padding here on the center tunnel, which is great. It actually is nice and soft, except where my knee hits is hard plastic. Again, it's like you have this one extra piece here that isn't padded, where my knee actually comes into contact with this. And so again, maybe if you're taller, you have, you know, larger legs or something, you might actually hit this nice soft padding. But for me, it's nothing but hard plastic, unfortunately. It's also kind of strange. You have this very nice door panel, you have the metal trim and the cool speaker grills and all that kind of stuff. And you have a good amount of padding here. Even the tops of the doors is a little bit soft, but then you have this hard, cheap, scratchy plastic. It looks like it's out of a, you know, $18,000 Hyundai Accent or something. You have that here in this vehicle, which is, again, the calligraphy top trim. If you're paying for the top trim, you should not have huge bits of cheap plastic here. I think they should have hid that a little bit better. Again, especially because it's just a sharp contrast from all the other nice soft materials you have here in this vehicle. I mean, again, we're not talking about a Genesis model or something, but still, it would be nice to have that. But, you know, I think the dashboard is nice and soft and, you know, feels pretty good. I also like the design of the dashboard, especially on the passenger side there, the little curves you have in the upper part of the dashboard. The stitching is all very nice. You also will see they have a huge extra cutout here on the passenger side, a nice large bin for, you know, a smartphone, and then some extra stuff could fit in there. I mean, it's a really nice large bin. By the way, that passenger seat does also have height adjustment, which is something you don't always get in passenger seats, so great to have the height adjustment. Moving on to the back seat here in the Santa Fe. So it's a nice and spacious back seat for the most part, again with one caveat. First thing though, looking up, you have this huge panoramic roof, which is really, really great. It's one of the things you do get with a calligraphy trim, but you can get it on lower trims of the Santa Fe as well. But it's a really large roof, and they did a great job with that, and it really feels nice and open and airy. But anyway, that back seat is pretty spacious. So I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself. I have about 6 inches of legroom to spare back there, so a good amount of space. I'm pretty happy with that. You know, for a midsize SUV, it's very competitive with most of the other stuff out there. But headroom is the only thing that's a little bit lacking. And again, only being 5'9", I'm sitting up really high, and I only have maybe 2 inches of headroom to spare. Now, this moonroof does cut in on headroom a little bit, so if you skip the moonroof in lower trims, you will get an extra, you know, inch or so of headroom there. But that's just the one unfortunate thing, is if you're tall and you're sitting in that back seat, it might not be great if you have a long torso. But otherwise, when you look forward, you'll see they have their own dedicated air vents, as well as 2 USB jacks and also a dedicated normal house current plug back there too. There's also a fold down center armrest with 2 cup holders built into it, and there's pockets in those doors with bottle holders as well. And so yeah, I mean, it's a pretty nice and comfortable back seat. There are also heated rear seats here in the calligraphy trim too, which is a nice touch for sure. And so overall, yeah, a really good back seat. The trunk space here in the Santa Fe is also fantastic. A nice, long and wide space. I mean, very fitting for a mid-size SUV like this. And so that's really what you step up to, you know, this over a Tucson for, is for that extra space in the rear there. And so it doesn't disappoint, because not only do you see a good amount of space on the top there, but you have 2 removable things in the floor there. You lift up the one towards the back, and you'll see 3 huge bins there, which are really deep and very useful for fitting, you know, lots of stuff in there. And then there's also another little cutout towards the rear there. And so you also see your fix-a-flat kit, because you do not have a dedicated spare tire, but you do have that that kit at least. And you'll see a little cutout there on the right hand side, a power outlet on that right side, and then just another speaker for the stereo on the left hand side. And of course there's a power closed tailgate too, but I mean plenty of space there in the back of the Santa Fe as well. But yeah, so I mean overall I think the interior of the Santa Fe here is really good. Alright, so let's start up and go for a drive. The Santa Fe here has the newer Hyundai key, which is a really nice key. It has this like satin finish on the front and on the back here. Just a few buttons. You do have the buttons here to do the remote smart park thing that was highly advertised, and so that'll allow you to inch forwards and backwards here with just the remote, which is very cool that you can have that here in the Santa Fe now as well. And but yeah, of course it is keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start as well. So just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. Alright, so setting off in the 2021 Santa Fe. So the first thing that I think I noticed about this right off the bat is the 8-speed dual clutch transmission. So that is one of the big changes. Of course, there's also an entirely new engine under the hood here, which I'll get to in a minute. But the transmission, so it's an 8-speed wet dual clutch transmission. If you don't know what that means, you probably won't be able to tell because they've really done a good job of making it very seamless. But basically, just whenever you're stopping and starting, you might every once in a while feel a tiny bit of an engagement point. And that is something that's new to the Santa Fe because previously they've had traditional automatic transmissions with a torque converter. This does not have that, so when you're really inching up a lot, it might make itself known a tiny bit, but it's really quite smooth and it gives you really quick shifts, and it's very responsive and feels really good. But that's just the first thing that I noticed. That's paired up with what you have is what is really razor sharp throttle response. I mean, this thing feels like it really wants to go. Part of that is thanks to this engine, which is a little bit of a hot rod, as you'll see in a minute. But I mean, really great throttle response though. Brakes also have a nice and reassuring feel to them. I mean, there's a good amount of dead travel before you start getting into some really harder braking, but it's very easy to be smooth in the Santa Fe, and for just a normal mid-sized family crossover thing, feels totally appropriate, totally good. Same thing goes for the steering here. It has a fairly light and relaxed feel to it, but I don't have any complaints with it either. It feels very good and appropriate. Other things here, visibility is fantastic in the Santa Fe's. So you have a nice large windshield, and I love that the A-pillar is super thin. It's very easy to see around. You have this extra little window, you have the mirrors off on the doors there, so very easy to see around all that. And view out of the back is great in typical SUV fashion, so no issues there. So overall, when you first set off in a Santa Fe, it'll feel very friendly and very nice, and that feeling continues on throughout the course of the drive. It feels really good, and I mean, you have a very nice smooth ride for the most part, pretty quiet here. I haven't had any complaints. I've already been driving this vehicle for about 100 miles here over the course of a week, and really have enjoyed my time with it. But I'm gonna go ahead and put it up into the sport mode here, and let's turn down onto this back road and see how it does. And here we go. A little bit of a delay for a second. And then it takes off and pulls very, very well. This motor is wild. It really is strong and punchy. So it's a new 2.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, and so it's the same engine you get in many other Kia and Hyundai and even Genesis products now. So in this application, it's 277 horsepower, 311 pound-feet of torque, and it really jazzes this thing up. I mean, I think it's about a 43 horsepower bump over the old top motor in the Santa Fe. 0 to 60 is 6 seconds flat, and it just really feels like it just always wants to go. I mean, even in normal mode, I found myself feeling like I actually had to be more relaxed with my throttle applications, because if I tipped in too quickly, it just really felt like it wanted to take off on me, and this thing is strong. And so, when you look at the specs as far as horsepower goes, this is going to be a very similar amount of horsepower to what you get with most of the V6 powered competition. So you have like the Honda Passport has about the same amount of power as far as horsepower. Same thing goes for like the Chevy Blazer with its V6, but those motors don't make as much torque. That 311 pound-feet of torque, and coming on nice and early thanks to the turbocharger, means that this is going to give you a seat of the pants feel that's much punchier than what you're going to get with all those V6 competitors. And this thing doesn't stop pulling, by the way, after you pass 2,000 RPMs or something. It pulls strong all the way up to highway speeds and does a really good job. And it's also paired up with this H-track all-wheel drive system that Hyundai calls it, which, like I mentioned earlier, does have a manually locking center diff if you want. Otherwise, it's just a normal automatic all-wheel drive system that's going to be front-wheel drive bias, but then will kick in the rear when it decides that it needs to. And it's done a good job of putting the power down here in the rain over my very rainy week that I've been driving the Santa Fe here. And there is also no dedicated manual mode, but as far as manual shifts go, downshifts are immediate. The upshifts, though, can be a little bit slow. That's the only thing that I've noticed here. But how many people are going to be manually shifting a Santa Fe? Anyway, we're coming up some corners here. Let's see how it handles in the rain. I'm not going to push it too much again because we are in the rain here. But it handles itself pretty well. So we have these 235 wide all-season Continental tires, and it handles itself pretty well. So they did say this is kind of like a new platform. I think the wheelbase is modified by maybe a 0.1 or 0.2 inches or something. But as far as the driving dynamics go, it feels really good. I do think this feels a tiny bit weightier than the old Santa Fe, that I reviewed 2 years ago, and I think that one, just felt a little lighter because the motor was a little bit smaller, and you didn't have quite as much of the luxury and tech like you get in this, so I think that maybe felt a little bit lighter. These curb weight is around 4,060 pounds is the curb weight for these, so, it's right in line with most of the other stuff, and honestly, it will still feel a little bit lighter probably than a lot of the V6 powered competitors. And, while we're talking about competition, I would say if we're comparing them, for anyone who's driving these things like sports cars, if you compare them, I would say that this definitely handles better than maybe the Honda Passport, which is a little bit more of a higher ride height, a little more focused on like the off-road thing, so it kind of gives up some handling because of that. The Chevy Blazer, I think, does handle a little bit better than this. It likes to hug the road a little bit better, I think, and this is, kind of blending the two, so this doesn't have any kind of off-road aspirations. It just really prioritizes that comfortable ride and the luxury feel, of course, of its calligraphy trim. And so yeah, maybe, if you go for the 20-inch wheels on the calligraphy, you have a lower profile tire. That might give you slightly sharper handling for anyone who cares. But again, most people going for this trim, I'm sure, are going to want the soft, smooth ride. And for that, you're not going to be let down. It's a nice, comfortable ride. It handles great. And I don't think anyone's going to have any complaints. One other competitor that I did drive fairly recently here was the all-new Kia Sorento, which actually shares an engine and transmission and much of the other mechanicals as this Santa Fe. And actually that felt a little bit sharper to me, and it was also being reviewed on similarly wet conditions. But I think that felt a little bit tighter in the Sorento than this, so I think that Sorento is still probably my favorite in this segment all around as far as handling and the drivetrain and all that stuff goes. I think Sorento is fantastic, but this is certainly a little bit more comfortable if that's something you're looking for. All right, so now we're on the highway and a monsoon, unfortunately, so I apologize for the audio. But so I have the highway drive assist system on, and we're going around some corners here where it does do the steering assist for me, and it's doing fairly well. So I only tested it a little bit here today and then also earlier this week, and it works pretty well. So this system, it still is very aggressive at times, and then other times it's not aggressive enough. And I still feel like it needs a little bit of fine tuning. It still does work pretty well though. I mean, the adaptive cruise control portion works flawlessly. It's pretty smooth with slowing down and speeding up, and it does all that very well. It's just the steering part that sometimes can be a little tricky, and in this vehicle it hasn't really given me too much of an issue, except so on the highway here it's been doing pretty well, but whenever I've been around town doing backroads driving and I've had the lane keeping assist on, there's been a few times where it's really dove into a corner like preemptively, like it thought I wasn't going to steer, and it was just basically like doing hard steering for me around backroads corners, which is kind of strange. It was really hands-on, and more so than I think most other vehicles in this segment. I mean, even like the Subaru and their system, their eyesight safety system, which can be kind of intense as well, that still will only like give you nudges. It doesn't like yank the wheel like this likes to do sometimes. I mean, I appreciate that it thinks I'm going to go off the road, and so it's actively saving me, but it does it a little bit too preemptively that I'm just like, I was going to steer, but okay, cool. And so it's very aggressive, the lane keep assist system. So it's not my favorite system. I know a lot of other people love the system and praise it endlessly. I think it works pretty well out here on the highway, but again, just off and on sometimes it gives me little shadows of doubts. and so that kind of prevents me from fully relaxing with this system. But again, your experiences may vary. It depends on, you know, the type of highways you have. If you have mostly straight highways, you probably won't have as many of these issues. Here in Western Pennsylvania, we have lots of windy, curvy highways where it demands a lot more out of these, the steering assist systems, than a lot of other places in the country. But otherwise, I mean, the safety tech's great. I mean, especially here in the top trim of the Santa Fe, you have every safety feature you could want. There's a lot of really good safety tech as standard. I mean, you have blind spot monitoring, automatic emergency braking, you have rear cross traffic alerts, and you know, all those types of things. Like I said, the lane keeping assist and the lane departure warning, all those things that it has built in here. And all that stuff does also work very, very well. It's just the steering assist, which is a little iffy and overzealous at times, in my opinion. But otherwise, yeah, all the safety tech here works really well. And also the highway driving is really nice here. I mean, obviously this isn't a great time to judge it because we have a downpour, but whenever I was driving this earlier this week and it was a little bit quieter and there wasn't a ton of rain on the roads and hitting the windshield, it was actually a very nice and comfortable thing. And I'm really just coming back to the ride quality here, especially on these 19-inch wheels with the calligraphy. It feels very luxurious and just feels really good. And the last two things I mentioned here about the Santa Fe are the fuel economy and its pricing. So first, we'll talk about fuel economy. So yeah, I've driven 102 miles here over the course of my week here, and my fuel economy average has been 18.7 mpg. So that was mostly, you know, around town, back roads kind of driving. There was a little bit of highway mixed in there, but that was about it. So, you know, I'm okay with that. These are rated at 21 mpg in the city, 28 on the highway, and 24 combined. So I am, you know, roughly about 2 mpg under the city rating, which is pretty average for my experiences. In most of the press vehicles that I test, I end up getting about 1 to 2 mpg under the city rating, and that seems to be the case here as well. So, you know, I mean, it's not too bad considering we have a very strong, powerful turbo 4-cylinder. This is a 4,000 pound vehicle, getting 19 mpg, you know, it is kind of par for the course, and so just something to keep in mind. Now, if you are concerned with fuel economy, one new thing here for the Santa Fe for 2021 is you can now get a hybrid version. And so that'll give you mpg into the 30s. Even the lowest metric is 30 mpg on those. So if you are interested in better fuel economy, you do take a penalty as far as power goes. I think they have like 226 horsepower. So you miss out on about 50 horsepower, but if you're worried about fuel economy, that's going to be the way to go. And it's awesome to be able to get 30 mpg or more in, you know, a vehicle like this. So that's definitely something worth checking out if you do care about fuel economy. And the last thing to mention here is the pricing and the depreciation in the Santa Fe. So as far as pricing goes, they start just over $28,000, and this one as tested is $43,430. And so at that 43 grand price point, this calligraphy trim, you know, it's, I think, still very competitive whenever you look at all the other stuff. I mean, Blazers get up at like 50 grand for a fully loaded Blazer, and then, you know, you look at other stuff in this segment, and you know, most of those will also be towards the low to mid 40s in their fully loaded trims. And you know, this calligraphy trim, I think I could personally skip out on, because aside from the quilting in the seats and the head-up display, which I can't even see anyway, you're having a suede headliner. It's nice, but I don't really care that much. You know, you still get a lot of the core features. You know, the heated and cooled seats, heated steering wheel, all those really big things that you're going to be using, you know, on a regular basis. You get those still in lower trims. You know, you can still get the digital gauges, the big screen, all that in lower trims as well. So you know, I don't think that the calligraphy trim would be worth it. I think you can get a very nice, just as nice, honestly, in my opinion, you know, as far as equipment goes, version of the Santa Fe for, you know, maybe just under $40,000, and that makes it even more competitive. But even at the 43 grand price point, again, it's going to be nicer than what you get in an Edge, that's for sure. Nicer than what you get in a Blazer. You know, nicer than what you get in a Passport from Honda as well. I mean, those have a smaller screen. Much less, you know, impressive on the inside here and stuff. So I think this is, even at 43 grand, you know, one of the best buys as far as, you know, luxuries and niceties and features go here. So yeah, I mean, the only other thing I will mention as far as pricing is that for 43 grand, you can get, it's basically, I think, like $300 extra. You can get yourself a fully loaded Kia Sorento in their SX Prestige version, and that gives you the same digital gauges, the same 10-inch screen. You have, actually, I think, a slightly more luxurious feeling interior with the quilting in those seats and some of the materials, and it's a little more rugged feeling on the inside, but still very luxurious feeling. And the Sorento gives you a little bit of extra space, and you actually have a third row in the Sorento, which you don't get here in the Santa Fe at all. You have to go up to a Palisade if you want to get a third row vehicle within Hyundai. But I think the Sorento, has the same awesome engine, the same great transmission, same great tech, same great features for the same price point, and you have, I think, cooler looks in my opinion, slightly sharper handling, and you have the third row. So to me, it's a no-brainer. I would pick the Sorento in the segment of vehicle. I think Sorento is best in class, but I would say this is a close second, and it's still very impressive and towards the top of the pack as far as mid-size SUVs go. I think this is definitely one of the better picks, and you cannot go wrong picking up a Santa Fe. The other little thing to mention though about price is depreciation, which is something worth noting here, because the Santa Fe does depreciate a little bit more than some others. So according to CarEdge.com, the depreciation here over about 5 years for a Santa Fe on average is about 49% depreciation, and so that's going to be a far cry from like the Honda Passport, which CarEdge is predicting has about a 39% depreciation over 5 years. So you're going to save a good bit of money when you go to turn around and sell and trade in a Passport over this. You do lose out a little bit on that, but this does do a little bit better than like a Sorento, for example, which is about 55% according to CarEdge. But even like a Chevy Blazer is a couple percent better than the Santa Fe here as far as depreciation goes. So that's not the best thing about the Santa Fe, but really if you're buying a Hyundai or a Kia, really the name of the game here is to keep it a longer period of time, because you get the 10-year 100,000 mile warranty with the Hyundai and with the Kia as well. But that really gives you that peace of mind over the long haul that you don't get with all the competitors. None of those others will give you any kind of warranty anything close to 10 years. And so if you are someone who buys a vehicle and wants to keep it a long time, I think the Hyundai or the Kia are going to be the top picks for that reason alone. But just keep in mind that as far as depreciation goes, you might miss out a little bit there in the Hyundai. But you can go to CarEdge.com and get all the details and breakdowns and all that if you want to hear more details on all that. But overall, like I said, I really like the Santa Fe here. I think it's one of the best in its class. And I think it's definitely a solid pick for anyone looking for technology, luxury, comfort, reliability, all those things here. And also if you were just someone who wants a good bit of extra power over most of the competitors, I think this is the way to go as well, because this engine is really a little bit of a hot rod in this thing, and it's kind of shocking. And if you're not used to this much torque, it might kind of take you by surprise a little bit. It's impressive. But yeah, so that's about all my thoughts here on the Santa Fe. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Huge thanks to Hyundai for providing me here with the Santa Fe to review for you guys today. And yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.